All right, for those of you that are creating the Rattlers, again, I mentioned this is going to be probably the most difficult one, but we can still do it. So I have just jumped ahead, and what I have done is created my 2 pinch pots that are going to be joined like so. As you can see, just me holding these, they are moving and not keeping their shape. If I try to connect these now, I'm probably just going to indent them and I won't be able to keep that nice circular shape. Now, I understand not all of yours are going to be the same exact shape. This is just demonstrating one that is, you know, relatively, it's not even circular, it's kind of egg-shaped. But, so what I did was I take the time to make sure these are roughly in a circle shape, because if I let this sit like that, it's going to dry like that. And when I go to attach it, no good. So I just want these to sit and start to firm up and get into that leather hard state. I want these to be leather hard when I attach them. I will come back in a couple of hours and show you the attachment after these have firmed. Okay, so at this point, I have actually left these 2 pinch pots out for about 12 hours, completely unwrapped. That was kind of risky of me, actually. I honestly just forgot to wrap them up, but just by touching them, they still move a bit, so they're not over hard. And if you notice, I can scratch into them nicely, and it does create a smooth line without ruining the structural formation of the pinch pot. So this is leather hard. So this is the stage of clay that I want my 2 pinch pots to be in for when I join them together. Just looking at these really quickly, they're not perfectly flush against one another, but I do think it's making enough contact that it will be okay. I can always try to rotate these and see if a certain alignment is better than another. If you're not comfortable with that, if you really want to make sure that they are flush and they touch one another, actually it looks like I can manipulate it and just push it in since it is still a little bit soft, and that did the trick. If that doesn't work for you, you can always use your needle tool to trim this rim and get it as flat and even as you can. All right, so at this point, I'm ready to start scoring, and remember, this is really not scoring. You really want to mar up that surface. This can get tedious. There are ways to speed this up, such as tools called serrated ribs, where it's basically, it looks like a serrated knife and it just like zigzags all across, and then you just do, you know, 1 or 2 swoops across and the serrated pieces make all those marks. We don't have those, but you are welcome to attempt to make them. Again, if you have an old gift card, you can always cut that serrated edge with your scissors just by, you know, cutting small triangles. All right, so that's my one. Okay, so before I attach these, one very important thing, this is a rattler and it will not rattle unless we have beads on the inside. So I have created, and all I did was I pinched off little tiny bits of clay and you just roll it into your finger to create these little beads. The smaller the beads, the more like, I guess high pitched, I want to say, the rattle, whereas if the beads are larger, it'll be a little denser and a little bit more low pitched. So I made 15. I would say about 10 to 15 will do the trick. I made them smaller because if you have 10 beads and they're large and they take up the majority of the space in here, then there's no room for them to move around. So I think what is ideal is for you to actually make these beads ahead of time. So make them before you even start with this, and then you will let them get bone dry so that when you drop them in, they won't be sticking to one another. Because if they stick to one another, then they, again, won't move around. So, oh, hush you. So this surface is, has dried enough that it shouldn't stick if these were bone dry, but these are not. So just as a cautionary, I'm gonna take little bits of paper towel and actually wrap my beads in them, and that will create a barrier so that my beads don't stick to one another. And yes, you can fire paper towel. It'll just burn out in the kiln. I'm just gonna pretend that these are drier than they are. And also, if they do stick together a little, I would think that just jostling it loose will help to, you know, break them apart if they do get stuck. Okay, one more thing that I want to prepare before I go ahead and attach my 2 pinch pots is I want to create a coil. So I have another piece of plastic clay. This is me just kind of sort of wedging it because I'm noticing it's not really staying together. So what this is this is going to go around the entire circumference of the 2 joined pinch pots once they have been attached, and it's going to line the seam. And this is just going to add extra strength to that connection. This might be a little wide for what I need it for, but all right, that's pretty close. All right, we're almost there. So now I can get my slip, or if you guys have it in your bags and you made it, I'm just using the sediment from when I was dipping my clay in, but I do have my pre-made slip, which is nice and goopy. So I can go in there. See, like, this is really nice consistency. I'll use that. You only need to do this on one side. You don't need to slip both sides. Okay, got it all around. Since these are harder, I can add a little bit of pressure. Just push them together, try to get those rough edges where I scored, get them nice and intertwined with the other side. And now the last thing I want to do is take that coil. You can break this into pieces. I like to do that and work on a little bit at a time, but then just line that along the seam. And then since this is soft, you can use your modeling tool, aka popsicle stick, to blend along and make this kind of seamless. My coil probably dried up a little bit while I was preparing for this demo, so. You knew you were getting locked in here, girl. All right, so just do that. Make this a little thinner around the entire seam to disguise that. Don't need to use your modeling tool. You can just use your finger if that is more comfortable. And I am putting a decent amount of pressure on my pinch pots by doing this. So this is why it was really important to let them dry beforehand so that we don't collapse it with the pressure. Again, you all might have your own preference on how you like to smooth. I like the rib because it's a little flexible so I can bend it to my needs like an avatar. So a gentle reminder, if you are doing this and you need to let your pinch pots dry a little bit, I would just wrap it in a plastic bag, since there will be about 48 hours in between the time that we see one another and we'll be working on these. The plastic bag, since there's no moisture in it, you know, it won't be adding moisture, so it shouldn't be staying wet, but it should hopefully start to firm your clay up a little bit. It's a good idea to maybe check on it. That is the annoying thing about clay, is that it does require a lot of attention. You know, you can't always expect it to behave the way you think, especially if we're not sure about the environment we're leaving it in. You never know if you have a hole in your bag. You don't know if maybe it's too tight, maybe there's no moisture leaving, and we do want the moisture to leave. So now this is ready to be decorated with our additive and our subtractive features. You're not going to hear anything moving around for now because it is still moist, but once it gets fired, you will hear. And don't forget, just a little precautionary pinhole for that air to escape. If you wait for the clay to be bone dry to do this, you won't be able to get that hole. So do it now while it's still leather hard and you can still pierce it. Now you have your hollow form.